Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Who's gonna be our introducer this time?
Um, well, I'll start.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Mary Catherine McKenzie. I've been doing Ruby for about a year, and still not employed in that field yet, but getting there. And that's about it.
Karen, can you give us a little short bio on who you are and
Sure.
where you're at in your journey?
I used to be a front-end developer, UI designer. I started learning Ruby through an online boot camp called Block late 2014. I kind of finished March 2015. Started my first job I think June. Then I quit. I didn't like it. And I'm in my second Ruby job and working as a full stack Ruby on Rails developer since I think last September 2015. So I've been there like 4 months, give or take. I consider myself pretty novice, and I think that's why I'm here. So just to get better at my craft and improve myself. So
Great.
that's pretty much it.
And yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Jamal Hansen. I found CodeNewbies I don't know, around sometime last year, and it kind of got me interested in working on my coding skills in my spare time. I ended up, because of encouragement from CodeNewbies, I ended up going to RubyConf this past year, where I met Clayton and Mary Catherine as they were wrapping up their Pooter book, and I was interested in joining the next round of the book, and I'm excited to get this one going.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
My name's Clayton. I've been doing Ruby for, wow, it's been like 2 years now, I guess. And I started my first job in the week of Christmas in 2015.
Nice.
And in tech. And so, yeah, I'm not very far. It's January now when we're recording this, so I'm not very far into my first job. I always talked in my application stuff about how I was really good at Ruby, and I was a Ruby first guy, and it kind of bit me in the ass because I think I've touched Rails one time since I hired on. Everything else has been Ruby stuff, which is fun. But yeah, I got a ton of Ruby. Getting a ton of old Ruby. I'm doing a bunch of stuff with 193, which is painful. But yeah, that's great. So, and like was said, I attended RubyConf, and we discussed our last book, Pooter, there, and hopefully I'll get to go to RailsConf here in a few months. I don't know. They haven't started doing ticketing yet, so I'll try to talk my employer into letting us go.
That would be awesome to do it as part of work.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if it's really close to where we live. So.
Nice.
So I was in charge of doing the slides this time. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me get that started. Okay. Has everybody seen my slides?
I do.
Yep.
Great. Okay. So this week we're covering the introduction to Apprenticeship Patterns by David H. Hoover and Adewale Oshunai. And I'm sure I butchered that name. I apologize to the author in advance. The foreword was by Ward Cunningham. Who all knows who Ward Cunningham is?
I know that he was involved in the creation of the wiki,
Yes.
and was kind of an old school techie type person, wrote a lot of really interesting stuff that I probably haven't read.
Yeah, he invented wikis, and he was a member of the Gang of Four. So if you hear talk about the Gang of Four, which were the guys who kind of invented Agile, he was one of those.
They also wrote the original Patterns book, if I remember correctly.
Yes. So this is a quote from him that I just found on his Wikipedia article. It says, the best way to get the right answer on the internet is not to ask a question, it's to post the wrong answer, which seems about right. I think that's also true on Slack. But in his foreword, he talked about the pattern, the nevermind reality pattern, which is basically like imagine if, and like forget what stands between you and your ideal. Like never forget like how you get there. What would be the cool thing if we could invent it? And so. Yeah, and he just kind of gave an introduction. Did anybody get anything in particular out of the foreword?
I think you touched on probably my favorite part of the foreword, was that nevermind reality. Just kind of a way to find, what you would do without thinking, I can't do it. Just thinking of the possibilities and what would be really good direction to move. So I hadn't really heard anyone phrase it like that before, and
yeah.
I like that.
Can I know we ran into this last time we did these. Can you, since you're the one recording this, can you make sure and tag my screen? That way if I'm not the last person who talked, it doesn't hop around and people don't lose the slides.
There, I think I did it.
Okay, let me look real quick, hang on. Oh, well, that's not gonna actually do any good. Okay.
Yeah, it's working.
Okay. All right. This was the little proverb at the beginning of the preface, which was an interesting little quotation. And the goals of the book, share solutions to dilemmas. The book, they emphasize that they're not technical solutions. They're about morale and motivation. And the audience is pretty much the CodeNewbie's audience. People who are newcomers, people with several years of experience, and those who are struggling to navigate their career, even if they do have a number of years of experience. And then the process of the book, history of how the book came about. There were interviews. They did research. The organization of the book, which Mary Catherine, you mentioned this before we started recording. The book is broken down really usefully. Like it's very like small chunks that are. It's almost like a textbook. It reminded me, or like a good modern textbook.
Yeah, he also kind of mentions that it's not always linear. Like,
right.
He's like, we made it so it could be read linearly, but you can also read it kind of as it suits you, like a choose your adventure story, which I think is pretty neat because I feel like that's a lot more applicable and comes a lot from what he says, like the wiki origins of this project. So
yeah. I have a Vim tips and tricks book that I got when I first started learning to code that's structured very similarly. Like each section is just broken down into like cross-referenced tricks and stuff, and it's super useful for that. Like, because you can pick it up and just kind of, it's almost like going to Wikipedia. You can get lost clicking around.
Oh yeah, that's the worst, or the best, depending on how much time you have.
So the form of the patterns in the book are the context of the pattern, the problem, the solution, and then a set of actions, such as examples of how to implement it. And then the usage of the book, it's not necessarily intended to be read linearly, as you said, and different patterns work together to improve outcomes. And then, okay, this is their manifesto, which I always cringe when I read manifestos. Like, even the Agile manifesto, like, the first time I read it, I was like, I kind of, my inner cynic jumps out when I see manifestos, but this was theirs.
I think manifestos are good if it's something that you can kind of relate to and jump in and get behind, but they can seem a bit...
Well, this one is structured almost exactly like the Agile manifesto.
Yeah,
Like,
it looks like it was kind of built off of it, kind of like in response to it. Like the right-hand side is responding to the left-hand side that is Agile.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like this is our this is their response to the Agile manifesto. And then the goals, share solutions to the dilemmas. It's not about technical solutions, morale, and motivation, which I think I already had this slide. Sorry. And then this was this cool map that I was able to track down an image of.
I printed it out. I liked it so much.
I have a digital version of the book, and it was not viewable at all on my phone. But once I found this, yeah, it's a really cool image, and I'm probably going to print that out and stick it up somewhere in my
What do you like about this image?
I don't know. It shows how they're all interdependent and all the different patterns.
Yeah, I like that it isn't so much a path as much as you can jump in at any point. I mean, maybe be the worst where you might think you're starting, but you could really start anywhere and then just kind of trace a path around to all the different ways, and it all loops back around because, say, you feel like you've gotten really good at one technology, but then there's like 8 other technologies that you need to focus on, and you can just kind of wander around the map. But as long as you're moving, then you're going forward. That's
yeah, and I think, yeah, and as someone who's like coming and like I just started applying to my first programming jobs literally like yesterday. So as someone who's literally just jumping into the field, it's kind of like, it's nice to know that it isn't just kind of this one track, like junior, senior dev, management, like frac. I mean that's, obviously these aren't like job descriptions, but it's kind of nice to know that you can take a lot of different paths to get to those points, and they're all okay and equally valid.
Yep.
Okay. Chapter 1, Introduction. First, it started out with Dave's story. It's Dave, the author. His history a little bit. He started out with BASIC when he was young. Tried to learn it from a manual, and he gave up. Then he went to Java for Dummies when he was in his 20s. Felt dumb by the time he gave up. And then he found some mentors, and they pointed him in the direction of Perl and helped him point him in the right direction. Told him to build a breakable toy first, which is, they gave him a project to work on basically instead of just a bunch of little scripts. And then they talked about how to use the exposing ignorance pattern. Like he would go and talk to people who, show what he didn't know to people who knew more. And then he started attending conferences. He found study partners, searched out books that were appropriate for his level, and then he tried and dropped Ruby. And then he picked up Ruby again when Rails hit because it was financially viable to do so. And then he wrote Ruby like it was Perl because Perl was what he knew, which I'm dreading this first time I start writing in another language, really, for that very reason. And then he decided he made a concerted effort to start from scratch on Ruby and try to dive into the documentation and write Ruby like Ruby's intended to be written, and started a website to record his progress on that. So that sounds very similar to a lot of the people on the CodeNewbies group and their progress.
I think,
go ahead.
I think it's, you are right, but missing the part where we kind of find a mentor, because now it's really hard to kind of find someone to to guide you through a journey, like your journey one-on-one, right? I think that's the toughest part, at least for me, to become a coder, that to find someone kind of to make it a bit easier for you, for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think any one of us who can find a mentor in the beginning of his career, that's a great like a great start kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I had a mentor from day one,
So
and I can't.
you're kind of lucky, yeah.
Yeah, no, I can't. I can't imagine how. Well, I would not have. I would have not. It's not have been able to. I would have not. I would have given up if I hadn't had a mentor. It's just that simple. Like I just wouldn't have made it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
you had
yeah.
the mentor, is what Jamal says.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, it is. Well, from that story, I can relate a little bit because it shows my age a little bit. But my first language was BASIC, and it was because that was really all the computer I had spoke.
Right.
And I'd gotten back then. They had like little books that you could actually buy at stores that had like little basic programs in it, and I would try putting them in and stuff. And I never made anything that was worth anything, but I spent a lot of time hunting and pecking on my computer trying to do that.
Yeah.
And I tried to learn Perl, and I failed. And I kind of did Java and never really got that into it. But then eventually, I kind of got going, and so I do think it was good the people that can get mentors, speaking to that point, are the people that do get mentors. That's definitely a great asset.
I almost see. I don't know. We get. It's almost. It seems to me like CodeNewbies for a lot of people functions in many ways as, if not a mentor, at least like one of the roles that mentors fill is when you're stuck, they can give you ideas on how to proceed.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I know I used my mentor for that a ton. And CodeNewbies seems to me is a good place for people, especially like when they're very first getting started, to find a community to fill that role, because God knows Stack Overflow is not where you want to be going to ask questions if you're just getting started.
No, I could see coding career get shut down by going to Stack Overflow and being told that you posted the wrong question. Why don't you read it?
Right.
Yeah, I think it's especially speaks to a lot to like, even the Ruby community, that like a community can kind of stand in as a mentor. Like the whole of the community can serve that role in a really good capacity, especially in an active group like CodeNewbie. So, and it's also, I mean, easy to find study partners, which if you can't find a mentor to guide you, at least get a study partner to like work with.
Right.
And books at our level, which is what we're doing now. Meta. So.
Yeah.
So I'm curious for you two, how did attending conferences, did that have any impact on you so far?
Oh yeah. Hugely so. I mean, that's where I met. Maybe it was just because of the Opportunity Scholar program made a huge had a huge role in that. But like connecting with everyone in the community and like being connected to my mentor, or the person who's now my mentor. I didn't know that at the time, obviously, and stuff like that, which is really awesome. But I know like I was very privileged to be able to get that opportunity to go under those circumstances and all that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, it wouldn't have happened had it not been for that conference. So I think that's really important, but it's also like if you can't, I don't think conference is the only places you can have those interactions. Like local meetup groups or like stuff that's a little bit more, more accessible and easier to get to, and even virtual conferences too.
Right. I kind of had a mixed feelings coming out of RubyConf because like I got a ton out of it, and I think it's kind of what pushed me over the edge on people starting to pay attention to me in job interviews and applications because they're like, oh, this guy's attending conferences, and like here's links to videos and stuff, and that was super helpful. But as far as like, and I also like met people that like I will have like lifelong. I don't know if like friendship's the right term, but like relationships, like working relationships with those people for years to come.
Yep.
And so like that was really helpful. But also like I think conferences, it seems to me like conferences are probably like a bigger deal when you've been doing it for a while. Like you're going to get more out of them, I think.
I think for me, I was being there for 3 days and kind of just being around or a lot of the people that you know might be reading their blog posts or even just you're interested in their talks. It was really motivating for me to just take a few days out of my life and my daily tasks and job and everything and just go and be a part of that.
I'm a little bit new to coding. I just graduated a coding boot camp a couple weeks ago, Ruby Stack, and tried to get involved. Thanks. Yeah, I mean it had some strengths and some weaknesses. I don't know if y'all have done in-person coding camps before, but you know there are some benefits and some not so good things about them. But yeah, I love the idea of conferences. I was just watching DHH on from the keynote from the 2015. I think he was talking about Rails 5. But man, here's my rule on conferences. I'm still unemployed. I'm still a junior or whatever, and I'm not going to go to a conference till the company pays for me to go to a conference. And I look forward to that day.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, do you guys pay to go to your own conferences out of your own pockets?
The one that I went to, I actually got a scholarship for. It was like a scholarship program, and it was specifically geared towards new people to the community. So it was like, if you've never been to a conference before, apply to the scholarship. You'll get matched up with a guide who can take you around.
That was through the conference application itself?
Yeah, it was through the conference application itself. And I think a lot more conferences are doing that now. I think Rails Conf, this is the second year RubyConf did it, maybe the third year. They're relatively new. Like, I won't be able to do that again, so I don't know. I don't know what, but I know you can also, on the other side of that, I think you can also apply to be a guide. And if you even just are active in the community, even online, and know some of these people, you can get that pretty easily. I think they'll pay for your,
so you like
at least your ticket,
not your
travel.
pay for it in sweat, yeah. Okay. Cool.
Things kind of lined up for me where RubyConf happened to be in the town where I live, so it wasn't overly expensive. I was able to pay just for the ticket. And
where is that? Where's that you live?
San Antonio, Texas.
Oh yeah. San Antonio's got a lot of stuff going on, huh?
Yeah, the more active tech community is Austin, which is
of course,
hour north. But
San Antonio is beautiful. You got the Riverwalk there. I love San Antonio.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. So with Dave's story, he we can, as it's clear, we can relate to a lot of what his progress, especially early on. So the book then got into defining its terms. So it asked, what is software craftsmanship? And it went over some of the previous attempts to define that term. So the best previous attempts in the past still had failures. For example, they failed to distinguish between software craftsmanship in practice and in the ideal. And they don't distinguish between the ideals and the medieval guild concept. Did anybody have anything to say about that?
Nope. Yeah.
Okay. And then what is software craftsmanship as this book defines it? And it talks about the 3 stages: apprenticeship, journeyman, and master. And then they went over the history of it and how it's a useful metaphor, but we shouldn't follow it too closely today. It takes lessons from Agile. So we can't just tell people to do things and follow rules. We have to instill a set of values that lead to innovation in new situations. Because if you just give people rules when they run into a situation the rules don't apply to, they're either going to try to fit the rule into the situation and create problems, or
like I wanted to discuss a point in the previous slide, if that's
Go ahead.
possible. I mean, can you be an apprentice without a master, if that term is kind of true? Because now, like for example, for me, I try to improve myself and everything, but I don't think, even at work, like the team lead or whatever, it's not like he's taking a role to kind of mentor or care about other developers within the team. So I most of the time I kind of feel like I'm on my own. So does that qualify me as an apprentice in the general term of things?
I think in the terms of this book it does.
It does. Okay.
Yeah, because the book specifically states later on that like your apprenticeship is kind of like it's as you find it, not as it should be. Does that make sense? Like it's trying to deal with like it says like if you're in that situation where you don't have somebody who's teaching you every day, like here's the way to make the best of that situation.
Yeah.
And make yourself into an apprentice anyway.
Yeah. One of the things I got from the apprentice section was that it was kind of like, put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to try stuff, but also be open to observe or learn new ways to do it. And it kind of talked about that a little bit at the beginning of that section, that, have an attitude that there's always a smarter, better, or faster way to do what you're currently doing.
One of the red flags that this didn't bring up in this section, but I noticed whenever, like when I first started learning actual like algorithmic patterns and stuff, or like the null logic pattern or whatever, and when I was like actual coding patterns, one of the first things that I was told was like, be super careful that you don't try to make your favorite pattern fit every situation.
Okay. Yeah.
So, like, I know that's a problem that a lot of people. So I don't know. We haven't got far enough into patterns in this book for me to know if that's even like a red flag. But I know it is as far as like technical coding patterns. It can be super easy to use. Like if you have a preferred pattern for a category of things, to use the wrong pattern. And it's as much of a skill of learning when not to use a pattern than it is knowing when to use it.
Can I step back to the mentorship thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of my take on that is, I mean, I've had a couple mentors throughout my tech career, tech journey. I started as a desktop guy and a network guy, and now I'm on the coding. But I guess for me, mentors have always just been when I run into a wall and I need a question, I talk to them, because, I mean, and if they're available, that's great, but they can't always be available when I need them. So, you got the internet. I mean, I know it's not one-on-one, but there are so many just diverse, qualified resources out there to get learning from that. I mean, that's how I choose to get mentored, as I come to things like this. I read a lot of podcasts, read a lot of books, all that stuff, and try to just learn as much as I can.
Yeah, but at times it can be a bit risky, because when you search online, there's different opinions and different way of doing things, and sometimes they are kind of in clash with each other. So unless you have the knowledge to differentiate what's going to work for you at this kind of scenario or situation, without a mentor, sometimes it can be kind of risky, and at times it might just waste your time, at least that's my experience. So.
I can agree with that, and I definitely think filters are very important for any knowledge. And like in my case, I can think of 3 of my mentors off the top of my head, and one of them who works for Apple would say something, a guy who works for startups would say something completely different.
Exactly.
A guy who handles the network infrastructure would have a completely different opinion. So I take from there what applies to my current situation and try to use that the best I can.
Yeah.
So I mean, for me, mentorship, like I would love like to have this one mentor, like a friggin' Obi-Wan Kenobi or someone who's just like, this is the way it is and this is the way you follow it. But since I can't find a guy like that, I just try to taste as many different sources as I can and take from them what applies to my current situation.
Yeah, makes sense. You gotta do what you gotta do, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good representation of that software craftsmanship map that was just kind of all tangled up, and like those people are all at different stages and stuff, and there isn't necessarily one single answer.
Yeah, I don't think any one person has an answer that solves.
Okay.
Good question though. That was good. That was good. That was great.
Yeah.
Good discussion.
So, okay, we're still on. So these are the history of software craftsmanship. This is how the book defines it. So it's like it's the embodying of a set of overlapping values. There is growth mindset, which is like the idea that you are always wanting to improve, and failure is an incentive to try something different. And it's the opposite of the idea of innate talents. You know, it's not that people have talents and you fail because you're not talented. It's that you know, failure is an opportunity to learn. Did I lose you guys?
No.
I firmly agree with that one. I firmly agree
I
with
think
that.
everyone is muted, so that's why there's no interaction. But
Yeah.
so far, so good.
And I like when he talks about the intrinsic stuff versus the external. I like that too.
Yeah. So some of the other values, adapting to change based on external feedback. So you know treating the world as a set of feedback tools. Pragmatism over dogmatism. Belief in sharing and open source.
Let's go back to the pragmatism over dogmatism, because both of those words can be a little tricky. How would we define those?
I don't know.
I know how I would define them. Can I put my definition?
We're reading a book with a manifesto that's also talking about pragmatism over dogmatism. I don't know. That's a tricky one.
Yeah, go for it. What do you got?
Okay, my definition: pragmatism is what works. Okay.
Right.
Dogmatism is what you've been taught works. So you stick to the stuff that you've been taught. I'm going to do it this way because that's what I've been taught. That's what we do, you know. And that's definitely not a very agile mindset, because in agile you take a look at it, you adjust, you know. And that's more pragmatism. You go with I interpret that as meaning go with what exactly what I said at the start. Go with what works, not with what you've been taught is what works, you know.
Yeah.
Like if you get stuck, I mean, so many of the older software engineers believe that like this is how I've always done it, this is what works. And it's like, yeah, it might work, but could it work better if you do it this way? You know, could you try something else? You know.
Yeah.
So I would say that sticking with what they had been taught is dogmatism, and the trying new stuff and going with what works is pragmatism. That's just how I define it. Does someone else define it differently?
I would agree with that. I would say that, you know, maybe one way to sum it up is that, you know, working, and this probably goes back to Agile Manifesto, I think, almost directly, but, you know, working software is better than correct software.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually have seen some interesting arguments over this on Twitter recently between Uncle Bob and Gregory Brown, who tend to be kind of embodiments of or at least they put, you know, Gregory Brown positions himself as an embodiment of the pragmatism over dogmatism, and Uncle Bob is an example of somebody who's dogmatic. So I don't know. I don't follow either of them closely enough, but I know that they've been arguing with each other on Twitter over this very issue.
So I'm pretty new to this whole thing. How have you guys built up the people you follow on Twitter?
It's kind of one of those positive feedback loop kind of things. Like you get into, you follow like one thought leader, one person, and all of a sudden there's like a tweet storm of people that you've never heard of before, and you start following them, and then they have tweet storms, and you're just like, you know, follow 500 people. What I do is I just follow a ton of people and then weed out the ones that don't have relevant tweets, as opposed to like try to like filter each one.
The most important rule is you always follow Aaron Patterson. Everything else is optional.
Okay, Aaron Patterson, I'll put that on the list. Yeah, I've always been a Facebook guy, so Twitter is kind of new to me, but I know a lot of coders use it. What other resources do coders use? I mean, Reddit. What do they do? Or is it Twitter only?
Twitter. Slack
Go ahead.
communities are big.
Oh yeah, Slack, of course. Yeah, Slack is huge.
Like the CodeNewbies one, but I'm also in a Women Who Code DC chapter Slack group, and I'm in a DC Tech Slack group. So it just kind of like, these communities kind of like build themselves around that. So like if you have like a local one, it's great to get in on, because then you start meeting people in your area without even having to leave your house. That's always great.
Yeah. And oftentimes you can find those on meetups.com.
Yeah, we got a
Meetup.
Or Meetup?
Meetups.com.
Meetup, I don't know which one it is.
We're pretty lucky. I'm in Miami, Florida, and Miami, Florida's got a lot going on right now, so I'm pretty lucky with that.
My example.
Like our refresh brings out like 400 a month.
In my experience, mailing lists have been not a good resource, but I know mileage varies on that. Some people really like mailing lists. But any other ones I've ended up on have always been just people arguing with each other, but they could be useful.
Thank you for the advice.
Let's see. Okay, so values: pragmatism over dogmatism, belief in sharing and open source, willingness to be wrong, which is one I struggle with, internal locus of control, which is one I think everyone struggles with.
Yeah, I have an interjection there. For as far as like internal locus of control, that's still something that, I mean, like I definitely struggle with. I know a lot of people do. Like, is there something that you can do to develop that? Or is that like a learned thing? Because I always kind of assumed that was one of those things that was intrinsic, either you had it or you didn't. But
I know there's practices that you can do to help improve on it.
Mm-hmm.
But
like I think
like,
we also have a certain amount of that, because like we're all doing this kind of thing on our own time. You know, like we're here, we showed up, we like read a book, and are now like hanging out in a group talking about it. So I think there's some sort of like no one's paying us to do this. So like you know, some internal locus of control there, but I still want to be able to, you know.
Okay, sorry, this
like,
is not a paid session.
Who can pay?
I'm out of here. Have you?
Yeah, but you know.
Do you know rational emotive therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy? I'm sure you've heard of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's big in psychology. It's like the thing now in psychology. The predecessor to that was rational emotive therapy, which was brought about by a guy called Albert Ellis, and he taught, you know, you are responsible for your own feelings. You know, if you're getting pissed off, stop making yourself pissed off. You know, so that's very much about the internal locus of control. So I could mail them to you. I just set them aside. I got like shit tons. I've got several Albert Ellis books, like how to stop people from pushing your buttons, how to keep yourself from being mad, stuff like that. If you want, send me your address and I'll mail them out to you, because it does teach kind of that internal locus of control. It's Psych 101 stuff. It's not coding, but it's pretty useful.
Huh, interesting. Wait, who did you say that was?
Albert Ellis.
Albert Ellis.
The father of rational emotive therapy.
Well, I can say that I'm glad that you guys stopped.
Go
ahead.
No, that was, yeah.
I was just going to say I was glad you guys stopped and talked about internal locus of control, because I was kind of lost on the term there. But
yeah, yeah. The idea is that it's like self-motivating.
Okay.
You're not externally motivated. You're internally motivated, and that your reasons for action and your reasons for responding the way you do to situations are internal.
Yeah.
And not external.
Yeah.
Actually, I was reading about that lately, and there is a kind of a way of thinking that it has nothing to do with motivation, and it's more about habit and what you kind of train yourself to do, kind of thing. Like if you set, okay, you say every day at 9 p.m. I'm gonna code for an hour, for example. Like first week it's gonna be hard, second week it's gonna be hard, but then it's gonna be like, okay, 9 p.m. I'm coding. So I'm not sure if that relates, but because for me motivation is kind of a big thing, and lots of times I don't find myself motivated to do anything. So I kind of try to find the source of that thing. So now I'm reading a book. It's called The Power of Habit, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about kind of like you should fool yourself to do the things that you have to do, but in direct way kind of thing. So yeah, maybe I'm not sure if that relates, but yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting that you said that because I'm by day I do graphic design, and a lot of people kind of associate that with like, oh, it's creative, like you have to have these like bursts of inspiration, and like that's just not true at all. Like you just keep doing stuff until something happens, as opposed to the other way around. And I guess that's kind of on the same vein of like motivation over inspiration. You know, you can't, like, inspiration is an external stimulus. You expect something to come to you, as opposed to just like pushing things out until you just like break down a wall kind of thing.
Have you read On Writing from Stephen King?
Mm-mm.
It's really, I mean, he talks, I mean, as an author, he's just like, yo, put yourself on a schedule and do it, because that's your fucking job. Sorry, pardon the French, but that's your job to write, so you write. It's not exactly what you're saying. You don't wait for the inspiration. You sit there, you put your hands on the keyboard, and you make them come out. Maybe they're good, maybe they're not, but the inspiration won't happen if you're not typing. You won't design something good if you're not designing.
Right. I think that definitely applies to code, because code is a creative process, for sure.
Yeah.
There's a million different ways to write one script.
Yeah.
Or not a million, but plenty of different ones.
Yeah, I like that point, because I think a lot of times people forget that code is creative. They just think you're making a set of instructions for something that doesn't feel, doesn't see. It's just going to follow those instructions. But there's definitely a creative aspect to it.
It doesn't feel and it doesn't see yet.
Right.
It gets there pretty quickly. I mean, yeah, I finding creative ways to test like code. Like I've lately been having to write some things that I'm trying to write tests for that are. It's difficult to find ways to test them, and you come around with tricky, like, oh well, I guess this test is going to monkey patch this and this and this, just so I can. Yeah, so it gets creative pretty quickly once you're actually doing it 8 hours a day.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, so we still have more values. Focus on individuals rather than groups, which is basically like we don't have leaders, we have teams. Avoid hero worship, that kind of thing. Commitment to inclusiveness, which is something I think our industry is starting to do better on. Skill-centric rather than process-centric, which skills. I'm sorry. Did you? I lost somebody there. Skills. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say skill centric rather than process centric. What exactly, like, could you like break down what that distinction is?
Yeah, I think it was emphasis on developing skills rather than following processes. I could look if you look in the book, it's in the software craftsmanship defined section. It was one of the ones I was a little hinky on too. If anybody wants to look at the book and maybe read a little excerpt on that one.
What that says to me is it's kind of like working against the concept of cargo culting, which I don't know if that's a familiar term or not.
Not a familiar term.
So I'm not sure if I know how to define it exactly. I think it was like basically there were areas of the world that didn't have it. Actually,
so I know the history of cargo cults. I can give it.
Yeah. Okay, that's
well,
good. I say it wrong.
Yeah, World War II, World War II, when the Americans were fighting the Japanese, they would set up bases on these never before visited by anybody but local people islands, and with them came much cargo, which was like goods, and the people during the war flourished and things went really well. And then when they left, some of these cults popped up. Maybe it wasn't World War II, maybe it was earlier, but these cults popped up that were built around. They would make runways so that the planes would come back and bring cargo, and they would put up flags because like that's signal that this is where you brought the cargo, and it was these cults that sprang up around not understanding the root cause of why the things were happening, but like parroting these behaviors in the expectation that it would lead to the previous outcomes, and not understanding the root causes of why these things happened.
Exactly. So I think the reason the skill centric versus process centric is that it's getting to kind of that root, that understanding why you're doing something and having the skills to do whatever it is you're trying to do it is better than following a set of instructions.
Right. You'd be amazed how much legacy code you see where people were literally just repeating the same thing over and over because that's how they were taught to do it, whether or not it's actually leading to the outcome that they expect it to do or not.
For me, it's an analogy that's not to code, but it like goes back to Bruce Lee, right? Bruce Lee kind of changed the martial arts world, and like instead of sticking to if someone throws a left punch, you counter with this thing. You know, he knew all the options, but you just stay loose. And instead of going through the fixed maneuvers that you were taught to do, you just, you know, when the environment changes and get dynamic, you just do what you can to survive it, you know. So you use what you have, and you think and you figure it out. You don't just stick to what you've been taught and stick to A, B, C, then D. You know, you look at it and say, maybe this would work or that would work.
I think that's a good way of putting
it. Let's see. Talked about there will always be skill discrepancies. So, like, you know, we have to come to accept that there are always going to be people with more skills and less skills than us, and that the journey is different for everyone. And situated learning is something they emphasize, with the idea of you learn best as an apprentice when you're in a situation where you're with people who are trying to solve a specific problem. You'll learn a lot about how to solve that problem if you're around people who are trying to solve that problem.
Yeah, I think for me that might be the only way I learn things. Because I only look up things and read tutorials or do examples or whatever when I really need to do it. But when I see a good article on Twitter, I kind of like it, but then I leave it for later because I don't really need to write about doing this with that for now. And so for me, that really kind of I can relate to this point. So
I have a giant list of bookmarks of articles I'll never get around to reading.
Yeah, you will when you need them, I think. So. Yeah.
It's always funny. I'll Google for something that I'm trying to remember or trying to learn how to do, and when I click on the link, there'll be a little star up there next to it saying that I've already bookmarked that page.
Yeah, it happens. So, yeah.
Okay, so this is how he defines apprentice in the book. It's somebody who's at the beginning of their journey. Yeah. An apprentice is always looking for a better, smarter, faster way. Or they assume that whatever they're doing, there's a better, smarter, faster way to do it. And they're interested in learning it. They have a drive to improve and find solutions. And this is where he talks about your apprenticeship is under your control and is your responsibility. He in the book, they're not assuming that you're in the ideal situation where you have a defined mentor and that person is training you. This book is to help you make the best of the unideal situations and still be a good apprentice. And then a defined journeyman, which is a person above the level of apprentice. They still value growing and learning, but now they have a new focus on developing communication channels and furthering their career. They have a responsibility to mentor, and they have a responsibility to communicate with the rest of the industry. And their main goals are diversifying and deepening their portfolio, and with greater responsibility comes the ability to do more harm.
That's knowing just enough to be dangerous?
Well, I think it's knowing enough to, knowing just enough to be dangerous. I know plenty of mentors who know just enough to be dangerous.
I think
plenty of apprentices, I mean.
Yeah, I think this point, because in the apprentice section they were talking about try to do things and break things, don't worry about it. But when you are in this kind of journeyman thing, you need to be careful, because
Right.
sometimes when you break things, it's gonna be hurtful or something like that.
Right.
I think
that's a good point. He talked about at the beginning where he talked about Dave's journey. One of the things they gave him was a project, but it was a project that it was okay if he broke it.
Yeah.
So and that gave him the safety net to make mistakes while exploring. And as a journeyman, you kind of have to move beyond that. And then the master, they have all the roles of the previous two, but they also have the additional focus on moving the industry forward. And it's most important to them. The most important thing to them is the acquisition, usage, and sharing of superior skill. So that was go ahead.
I just want to say about, I liked the kind of leveling there. It's not so much that when you move from like an apprentice to a journeyman to master, it's not so much that you are learning an entirely new role or taking on an entirely new persona. It's like you're just doing what you did before, but you're expanding the scope out. So before
Right.
your scope was really just focused on yourself, and then like once you get to a certain point, you can start focusing on people around you, and then when you get to a point that's beyond that, you can focus on the entire industry.
Well, and by the definition of this book, it seems like most people don't ever become masters.
Yeah, I would say.
Because most people never move past the improving their portfolio, and they don't ever start working on industry focused stuff. I can, we can all name people who we would consider that level, but a lot of people never reach it. So apprenticeship defined as opposed to being an apprentice. This is what an apprenticeship is according to the book. What it's not the medieval cliche, and it's not an ideal outlined by other books. If they were trying to define apprenticeship by the ideal, then there would be a book focused on selling to managers and masters who are trying to develop those kinds of shops. This book is trying to deal with people who are not in that situation. For this book, the purposes of the definition of apprenticeship is a frame of mind. It's recognizing you're still at the beginning, even if you have years of experience. And most people have to create their own apprenticeship because they won't get the ideal situation. And an apprenticeship pattern, it's attempts to offer guidance on ways to improve your career progress. A lot of the apprenticeship patterns in the book, they said we'll see them as kind of obvious and unoriginal. But a lot of them are generative, I guess, generativity, yeah, that's the one, sorry. There's a lot of,
yeah.
That's a tough one. But that means that it's not like algorithms. It's more that as you use them, they're tools that solve problems, and you'll get different outcomes each time. It's not an algorithm to get to the same solution every time, but they also work together for different patterns.
I think that this is one of the reasons I'm excited about doing this book in a book club format, because you can get different points of view. You know, he talks about it being it might seem unoriginal when you read it, or you know, you might read it and say, "Hey, I know what this is already." But
Right.
when you can get it in a format like this, you can get other people's opinions on it and kind of talk it out, and then get a deeper meaning out of reading it and being able to start using that terminology rather than just kind of, you know, it's probably not a good thing, but I might read through it on my own and just be like, yeah, I think I get this one. Let's skim the rest of this chapter, kind of a thing.
Right.
Just like skip through it, say, boy, that was an easy book, and it's just like check it off on your Goodreads. You know? I got one more book to reach my 50 for the year, yay!
Exactly.
So where did the patterns in this book come from? They're originally extracted from Dave's experiences. They were supplemented by Abe's experiences, along with a number of interviews with people in the industry. They troubleshot the ideas in some workshops, and they got some community feedback before publishing. And at the end of it, they said, where do we go from here? You have the power to choose and adapt patterns. And apprenticeship is a season of focusing on growth over almost anything else, including over money, which was an interesting point. And this is your time to be selfish about your learning. While you're an apprentice, almost all of your focus should be on learning, and less on giving back to the community. That's for when you're a journeyman.
Clayton, I hate to interrupt you. Maybe I can put you on speaker and you can talk out loud to my wife about the focusing on myself and my learning more than my income right now. So I want to hear that perspective from someone else.
Yeah, that seems kind of like that's like hard to do if you're not in a position of privilege.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Fortunately, I am privileged, but still. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had a job interview where I literally just had to tell them, like, I want to break into the industry, but I'm not taking a pay cut to do it. Because like a lot of companies will try to lowball you if they know you're a first timer.
Yeah.
So hey, you guys have more experience than me, and I just graduated boot camp, and I've been a freelancer in a lot of different things before that, and before that I was a business owner or whatever. So I'm basically unemployable, you know, until I got done with this boot camp. So now I've got like a junior developer, no college degree, but I've got a junior developer education. But I feel like you can only learn so much in 3 months, whether it's full-time or not. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to deepen that. At this stage, with my apprenticeship and my learning and my value in the future, because I don't think I'm worth anything right now, but I mean, do you think it's worth like taking an unpaid apprenticeship, or should I, which would stretch my finances, or should I look for a paid, I mean, like we got Launch Code down here, which is Jim McKelvey's thing, and they got paid internships and paid apprenticeships, and you know, the boot camp is offering me placement services, but I just want to make sure I'm with the right place that teaches me the right things, and I think that's more important to me than the money. What has your guys' experience been with that?
I don't know, man. Hard.
I'll take a shot at that one.
Go ahead.
I would say, as far as jobs go at this point, do what you need to do to get by, and spend any time that you can outside of that finding projects, communities, anything you can get involved with. If you can find a job that gets you into that and you're doing that, then that's great. But if it's not there, then you know, do what you need to do job-wise to don't like jump into something that's gonna hurt you in the long run.
Yeah, I mean,
and
somebody's.
also
Go ahead.
don't undervalue yourself either. Like, you know, you might be like, I don't think I am worth doing a paid apprenticeship, but I mean, like when I first started applying for jobs, I was applying for unpaid internships and was getting rejected and rejected. And finally I applied to the one like full-time salary job I applied for, I got. but like I was getting rejected from like unpaid internships left and right just because like I don't know. I guess they thought I was overqualified, but they weren't communicating that. So like you never know. So I would say don't undervalue yourself and know what you're worth, and like time-wise, like monetary value, like in your area, you know, salary research and stuff like that is super important too.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something I struggle with.
Yeah, I would stress on the point that you shouldn't undervalue yourself, and if money isn't an issue for now, you should look for opportunities where you can learn. For me, that's what I tried to do, but it was kind of very hard to find. In Canada, it's really hard to find good companies like that you guys have in the States. It was really challenging. But I was open to paid, unpaid, apprenticeship, internship, whatever you call it, as long as I'm going to be learning. But it didn't happen, and so I was kind of applying to this and that. So if I find an interesting apprenticeship, I go for it. If I find a full-time position, I go for it. So I tried to apply it for an internship at Shopify. I got rejected because I don't have enough experience. But then I applied for a full-time job and I got it. So I don't know. It's weird, but that's what happens. I thought at Shopify, although the pay is going to be less, but I'm going to learn a ton of things, experiment with things. That's what that was kind of my motivation. So my advice would be, don't undervalue yourself. Do not do that, and then look for learning opportunities. So if it's not possible, then go for full-time jobs. Just apply for everything and just be honest about it. Tell them I'm a newcomer to Ruby. I have this much experience. I did this kind of projects, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And I think be passionate about it. But for me, actually, applying to jobs and cover letters and all that kind of things, like it's bullshit.
It's hoops.
It's you get filtered for dumb reasons or whatever. I don't know how they think, and you need to kind of, I'm not sure if that's right, to kiss ass writing the cover letter just so you can get into the door or whatever the expression is. I hate it. The whole experience of applying for jobs, I hate it. Usually in interview I do good, but it's getting past the cover letter and CV thing. That's where I suck at, and that's where it's really challenging. I find it impossible.
That link I sent you about the positioning yourself to be mentored, those guys also have a ton of resources on how to do a cover letter, how to interview. I mean, they've got like 130 hours of how to interview. Like they've got a 40-minute friggin' thing on how to shake a hand, you know, how to properly handshake. And they got a specific thing about about how early to show up to your interview. They want you to show up 7 minutes early, not around 7 minutes. So they're very strict about how to do it. So if you want some guidelines, they have some formal guidelines. I don't know if they would work for you, but they definitely will talk at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they also have another podcast called Career Tools.
Yeah, Career Tools. It's the same guys. Yeah.
The only advice that I can give people when I'm doing this stuff is, and this is web dev stuff, because like web app development is the only thing I've done. But when you're looking for a job, if you're looking for a job doing web app dev stuff, have something in production that you're maintaining that is on a public repo, and include the link to it and to the site in anything that you send to somebody. And this is awful, and it sucks, and it's a horrible thing, but who you know matters a lot. And the best way to know people in your community is to go to meetups.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah.
It matters a lot. If there's any way at all, even if you're having to take time off from work to go to meetups, go to meetups. Yeah. Because you will, even if you don't find mentors there, you will find job opportunities there. That's how I found out about the job I ended up with. was going to meetups.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing I struggle with too is when I'm applying for a job or I'm interviewing for a job, not jumping to the conclusion that because I did or didn't get the job has any reflection on me. That, just because I got the job doesn't mean I was the best candidate. Just because I didn't get the job doesn't mean I was the worst candidate. That there's other circumstances going on. Maybe that job was already filled and they just had to open a rec just because they had to. Or, there could be a number of different reasons, but the outcome of a job application doesn't reflect on you and your abilities.
I guess one of the things I'm psyching myself out about is a lot of these positions, they say junior developer, but they're looking for a senior developer skill set, or they say, they offer, whatever. They say they want a senior, but it's really a junior they're looking for,
Apply for everything.
Yeah, just apply for everything, right? I mean, I've got the network. I know everyone. I think the biggest obstacle is I don't know everyone, but I know a lot of people. I think the biggest obstacle is just me. So I think I just need to get off my ass and start doing it.
It's a numbers game.
Yeah.
And it's also a lot of places, even though it is like a hard science, kind of like you either know it or you don't kind of thing, a lot of places do hire on personality and willing to learn.
Yeah,
like,
especially for junior, right?
Yeah, especially for junior. A lot of places will hire based on, your potential based that rather than what you know already, because you're more the mold, Like I've seen a lot of I've seen a lot of positions open, at least in DC, they're like looking for, like maybe very little professional experience programming, but like a self-starter who's learned it on their own, went to boot camp or whatever, but like we want someone to like grow within our company, which I think is really cool, and I've been applying to those like crazy. But we'll see how that turns out.
I think some people are actually looking for that. They don't want to have to untrain someone from any bad habits that they've come across. They want to be able to get someone who's motivated to learn, but doesn't have any bad habits in place yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was a little taken aback by the book, right? It was like apprenticeship design. I thought that was like design patterns, but it's actually on how to, design yourself to be an apprentice in your career. So I think that's very awesome. It's what I need right now.
Yeah, that's what I thought when I saw patterns. I thought, oh, I really wanted to get into that, but yeah, that's even better, I think. Good choice, guys.
Yeah, I've got the Gang of Four book like right next to it, ready to go, and that's what I thought we were doing, but it's a little bit different than that.
Yeah, I would say that's even better. So,
yeah. This is what I needed right now. So thanks, guys.
Yeah. So this kind of concludes chapter 1, right? So some of us should kind of do slides for chapter 2, or how does it work? Or Clayton, that's gonna be your thing.
No, we're trading off.
So I kind of feel that's your thing, man. So don't back off.
So last time I start doing it every week, and we made it like we said up front like we cannot have that again.
Yeah.
So I volunteered to take the first round, but I definitely want somebody else to take the second round. I'll do it again before the end of the book if I need to. But,
yeah. Do you mind sharing with us the slides so we can kind of
follow
the same kind of theme or pattern, because it looks good. So.
Yeah, I did them on Google Docs, and I'll just make a link. I'll post a link to.
Yeah. So.
All right. So who's doing week 2? If no one else wants it, I'll take it.
It's yours.
All right, I got week 2.
It's yours. All right. Okay.
So, and you'll share the link to the Google Docs, right?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to post it right now.
Perfect, thank you.
And then this video will be on YouTube later, so if you want to reference it.
Yeah.
All right.
Surprise.
Gotta love technology.
Mm-hmm.
I really do, man. I really do love it. I don't know how old you all are, but I wrote my first program in 1980 in BASIC, and unfortunately I didn't stick with it. Like the intro to the book, the guy's like, yeah, someone gave me this scripting book on Perl, and I basically wiped my ass with it. That was me. That was me. I was plugging in computers to brand new Ethernet networks, so all I needed to know was IRQ and port settings. That's it. You know, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And dude's like, here, learn Perl, it'll make you a millionaire. And I'm just like, I'd rather, you know, chase women and drink beer. But we're all young ones.
Clinton, Clayton, you mentioned something about learning algorithms when you were in your learning journey.